Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Village of Cary and the Board of Zoning, Planning, and Appeals, I'd like to hereby call this meeting to order on this Thursday, April the 10th, 2025. The time is 6 p.m. We have a quorum of members, and at this time, I'd like to ask our Director of Community Development, Mr. Brian Simmons, to please call the roll.
Williams.
Here.
Kretschmer.
Here.
Graziano.
Here.
O'Laughlin.
Here.
Drandell. Castetter.
Here.
Corey.
Here. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to rise with us for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks very much, everyone. So what I'll try to do, everyone, is just step you through the process tonight. I think Mr. Kim here has seen it before. Good evening. But I'll just step you through it again, just to refresh. We've got some people here from the public that may want to comment, so I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So the way we'll do this is that Mr. Simmons will give us an overview of the application, and then upon conclusion, members of the ZPA may have some questions for Mr. Simmons. Once we conclude that portion, Mr. Kim, you're welcome to step to the podium and add any additional comments or color to the application that you think is appropriate. I should tell you that the proceedings is recorded so that the village trustees or anyone else for that matter that wants to see this meeting in the future can go back and see it. So when you approach the podium, if you wouldn't mind just stating your name and address for the record, that'll be greatly appreciated. Again, once you conclude your remarks, members of the ZPA may have some questions for yourself. Once we conclude that portion, there's some members of the public that are assembled. I think at least two of them have been here recently. The way we do public comment is you're welcome to approach the podium, make your comment on tonight's application. And the idea behind the public comment, just to refresh everyone's memory, is not to be asking us questions and thinking we're going to respond back, or conversely asking the petitioner questions and they're going to respond back. However, if we get to that phase of the application where there's a lot of questions about the project, we'll ask Mr. Kim to catalog those questions and then come back up and potentially comment on what the public is asking about. So that's the way that public comment portion will work. And then we'll close the public portion. Members of the ZPA may have questions amongst themselves. We'll take a vote, and then tonight's vote gets delivered back to our elected officials, and I know you're familiar with that part of the process. So before I go to an administrative matter, does anyone have any comments or questions about the process? Pretty straightforward. Yeah. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen of the ZPA, you would have our meeting minutes from our last meeting, and this was for basically a final plat approval for Caper Drive, Reuben Lane. There was two changes that we made there. Nothing very complicated. So unless anyone has any further comments about that, the chair via voice vote will ask for your approval. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. At this time, we will move forward to Village Case 25, ZPA 03002. This petitioner is for Northern Point Properties. It's a request for a conditional use for a 12-unit multifamily building, parking variance, and density variations, and we'll turn it over to Mr. Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned, the request this evening is for a proposed project to convert the existing office building located at the subject property to a multifamily rental building. Brief history of the property, it's currently zoned B1, which is our central business district. That district does allow for various uses, including office, retail, and multifamily structures. The approvals this evening would be to seek a conditional use for that conversion to a 12-unit multifamily building, and there would be two variances that would be associated with the proposed use, which include a parking variance to reduce the required parking from 27 to the existing 20 spaces on the site, and also a density variance to increase from the maximum 18 units per acre in the district to 26 units per acre based on the unit count in the building. The history of the property, obviously the site was part of the original corporate limits of the Village of Cary. It was originally developed as a single-family home, as you can see in the 1983 aerial on this slide. In 1968, the property was rezoned to the R3 multifamily residential district, which is consistent with the properties directly to the west of the site. located on Crystal Street, Route 14. And in 1997, the property was rezoned to the B1 Central Business District to accommodate the construction of the existing two-story office building that's on the property. The proposal this evening, this petitioner is seeking to convert the existing building from office uses to rental units, which would consist of a mixture of one-bedroom units, primarily on the first level of the structure, and studio apartments on the second level. As you can see by the image in the lower left-hand corner of the existing building has 3 exterior entrances to the building currently, and each one of those entrances have stairwells that access the second level. So there'd be 3 quads, if you will, of 4 units in the building. So each door would have access to 4 individual units in the structure. The relief that's requested for the project, again, is related to the conversion from the office use to residential. So within the B1 district, the maximum density that's permitted within the code by right is 18 units per acre, which would allow a maximum number of units on the property of 8 units based on the slightly under half-acre size of the existing site. With the 12 units that are proposed, which are the 12 existing office spaces that are in the building, the density that would be provided for the site is about 25.25 units, which rounding up would be the 26 units per acre that's requested for the variance. Likewise, for the parking, code requirement is for a conversion from the office square area. There's a different parking requirement for office uses versus residential units. So the existing site complies with code for the office use, but the conversion to residential would change the code requirements for each individual unit is required to provide 2.25 spaces per unit. The petitioner is requesting a variance to reduce it to the existing condition, which would equate to about 1.6 spaces per unit for the residential uses in the building. The petitioner provides some information within their packet for justification for the requests that they have, and they can provide some additional testimony as well for the proposed tenant mix that they would anticipate for the project that would justify the variance. With any requests, there are various standards that are within the code that would be reviewed for specific requests. In this sense, the conditional use standards are listed on the slide, that the use would not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, or comfort, general welfare, would not substantially diminish or impair values of property within the immediate vicinity, would not impede the normal orderly development of surrounding property, or create an overburdening of municipal services within the village. Likewise, there are standards for the variances as requested. Specifically, the hardship was caused by unique circumstances related to the land, not the general conditions of the district. The applicant has not taken any action that has caused the extraordinary condition, and the relief proposed will not alter the character of the locality, to summarize a few. Again, the petitioner did provide information within their package as far as justification for their requests, for the requested relief for this project. And should the ZPA determine that the various standards have been met, it is recommended that the ZPA recommend the following motion, which included the approval of a conditional use for a 12-unit multifamily dwelling and density and parking variations for the property located at 210 to 214 Crystal Street, subject to the conditions that are listed in the staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have regarding the request, and the petitioner is here as well to provide additional testimony. As per the UDO, this request would be village board final, so any decision this evening would be a recommendation to the village board for consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simmons. Before we turn it over to the petitioner, questions from the ZPA? Okay, so Mr. Simmons, I have a couple.
Sure.
So I'll start what I think is an easier one. There's obviously a number of people that were notified in and around, including the village. Did you receive any feedback from any of the people that were notified?
We did not receive any feedback from those that were notified. And then actually, to that point, one thing I did notice in the packet that was distributed, the affidavit of mailing was not provided in your packet. I do have that. We do receive that the notice was timely from that standpoint.
And that was sent 14 days in advance.
15 days.
Thank you very much. And then a couple of other items. On the parking request, I know Mr. Graciano's much more knowledgeable about this than I am, but does it require handicap spaces? Is that part of the request here when we reduce?
Yes, so the number of spaces that are provided on the site would include, there's a minimum requirement for the number of accessible spaces that are provided on the site. A certain ratio of those need to be accessible in nature. The existing number of spaces on the site would be compliant with that requirement.
And then finally, and I'll ask the petitioner as well, but has this been reviewed by the fire department in terms of fire suppression issues or anything that would be required?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So from a building code standpoint, as the conversion, if it were to approve and go forward, there are various improvements that would be necessary to the building to comply with building codes for the change in use from office to residential, which include potentially sprinkling the building from that standpoint. And fire reviewed it and had no comments based on the proposal at this point.
Thank you very much. So before I turn it over to the petitioner, I just want to double check with the ZPA. Any other comments, questions? All right, Mr. Kim, we'll turn it over to yourself. You're welcome to add any additional comments to the application that you think is appropriate, and welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jay Kim. I reside at 73 Lakeshore Drive in Barrington, Illinois. One thing that I do like to add is that the spaces that we have is going to be very, very small. And what I noticed in Cary in general, I don't know for sure for facts, there isn't a lot of like a small, for instance, a studio type, smaller living quarters for that's available for rent. And I think it's ideal to have that type of apartments here in Cary, especially in the vicinity of the train station, for those people that young single professionals that are starting out need an affordable place to stay. I think it'll be an ideal place for it. So.
Okay, before we conclude, I just want to double check, Mr. Graciano.
What do you consider affordable?
Affordable. So I've noticed that a lot of the newer units going in, because I do look at the market of the rentals and stuff. So I'm thinking about the studio size, market rent about $1,000 per studio, and maybe about $1,200 to $1,300 for the 1 bedroom, 600 square foot.
That consistent, Neil?
Mr. Kim, I had a couple of questions around the studios. It's been a long time since I lived in a studio, but it was in New York, and I didn't even have a car. But out here, I'm assuming people will have cars, and we're reducing the parking lot to the requested 20. What I don't know, and I know you have the Commons apartments down there, and I know they're larger, but I'm assuming that 1 bedroom might come with 2 people, and even a studio might come with 2 people. Now, I don't know if that implies 2 cars, but I'm wondering if you can help us understand, in your experience, when someone's renting a 1 bedroom, for example, is it usually just 1 person, or is it 2? And if it's 2, is there an issue with automobiles or not? That's what I'm trying to solve for.
That's a great question. So I did look at my previous tenants and my 1 bedroom versus my 2 bedrooms. So currently, I have 7 2 bedrooms, and 4 of them have 1 cars, 1 vehicle.
Okay.
I have 8 1 bedrooms, and they're all 1 car. So from my experience is that most people going to smaller spaces usually require 1. I think I had one time where I had 1 bedroom, they had 2 cars. It was a couple, both had jobs, had to go to different places. So, but in most cases, what I notice is that it's 1 car per family, or especially in this situation where it's going to be a single person, it's 1 car.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So anyone else on the ZBA questions for Mr. Kim?
I guess my question would be, would you look at or consider delineating some of these spaces? This is for apartment one, this is for apartment two, and then have the other few parking spaces as overflow.
It's a possibility, yeah.
That way it kind of stops the who's getting what spot type of thing.
Yep.
Did I see something for scavenger for trash? Is it outside? I didn't see. on the-
Yes, it's outside up on that corner portion, right there.
Oh,
you
okay, yeah,
see.
yeah, yep,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's what I thought.
Anyone else for Mr. Kim? No? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kim.
you.
Appreciate it. So ladies and gentlemen of the audience, if anyone would like to speak about this application, you're welcome to come forward again. If you wouldn't mind just stating your name and address for the record, that'll be greatly appreciated.
This application.
This position.
Yeah, you might recall from our last meeting that you're welcome to speak about anything you like. We try to be an open-minded bunch, but what the matter at hand tonight is the application to convert an office building into some apartments. That's the request this evening. So if you wanted to talk about Maplewood, for example, that's not something we're going to be talking about tonight.
Well, this was not Maplewood exactly, but it was just other stuff that in general.
If it's related to this petition, you can,
If it's related, why don't you come forward, because I think there's going to be a problem, everyone trying to understand what you're saying, and maybe you can just repeat your first question, and we'll go through this again so people can understand what's being asked. And state your name and address, please.
Chris Riki, Cary, 446 Lloyd. A lot of questions I ask is referring to some of these, for instance, apartments that go in. First off, if you got a two-bedroom or even a single bedroom, and whoever lives there has two cars, and they figure that a single unit may have one car, but if you have family or friends over and you're taking up 2 or 3 more parking places, I mean, where's everybody else gonna park? And if there's no parking on the streets, or how is that gonna affect parking with the residents also in the neighborhood? You know, I don't know if that's ever taken into effect with some of these apartment complexes that are put in. I mean, 'cause on holidays, I'm sure you have family and friends over, or you go other places, so you'll have extra cars there. And you have these apartment complexes, and they only take into consideration 1 to 2 cars per unit. And I don't understand how that can factor in to these places. So I just,
Well, what we'll do, Mr. Riki, is that I mentioned earlier that we'll ask Mr. Kim to come back and speak to this, and then we'll also ask staff if he's experienced. He's probably got a good line of sight on other complexes in and around our community, and we'll double-check your ask. I think it's a legitimate question about this particular application, and we'll get you an answer as best we
okay,
can.
because it's not just, I mean, I understand what he's doing, but it's like that all in general, when they put apartments in. I don't know if you can grasp where I'm coming from.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question, and maybe what we'll do is we'll continue. I'm not sure if someone else wants to speak on the application, or if, yeah, okay.
Hello,
Hello,
Martha Ritter, 239 School Street.
welcome.
That's the same thing. If they park in the train parking lot, do they have to play Frogger to get across 14? Because we can't even get across Carroll Algonquin Road right now. My son got that sign put in. He called the state and everything, and they put it in. It's like playing Frogger for me to get across to go to the ice cream shop. I got almost hit 4 times already. They don't stop. Never any police there, nothing. The lights will be flashing, those yellow lights, and they just blow right through them. And if you can't even get across there, how the heck are you gonna get across 14 if they park in 14 to go over there? if they have a party. There's not enough parking. So, I don't know, that's what I'm thinking. Play Frogger.
Thank you, Ms. Ritter. So, Mr. Kim, maybe if you wouldn't mind, and I want to make sure the other gentleman seated back there, if there's any more public comment before we turn it over to Mr. Kim again? Okay. So, Mr. Kim, if you wouldn't mind just trying to address as best you can the gentleman's comments around someone has a visitor at their apartment and what your experiences have been with circumstances like that.
Yeah, my experience has been that usually the people with one bedrooms, they usually don't have parties there. Usually they're going to other places where they have parties, or a family get together. So typically they don't. Sometimes they do have a friend over or so, I notice, and they might have 2 additional cars, but it doesn't happen all at the same time. Like I said, my experience, the parking lot has never been like full to the max. The only time that has ever happened was there was an event happening across the street, and then they just kind of saw open spaces and they started parking in the Country Commons parking lot. So that was the only time I actually had an overflow. I had some complaints coming from my tenants about that. But other than that, I've rarely seen the property full, and that's 18 units there. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim. It's appreciated. So, Mr. Simmons, maybe you could comment further. I'm just thinking, schoolhouse apartments here, that's relatively new. Ridgefield, along 14, Haber. Though I'm not personally recalling anybody expressing concerns, but you're here in Village Hall with some regularity.
Yeah, so from a code perspective, obviously every site or project operates somewhat similarly and a little bit different as well. So it depends on the size of the project and the unit mix generally. So our code currently does not differentiate between studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom apartments or units. So it just has a blanket requirement of 2.25 spaces per unit. So generally, smaller units, studio, 1-bedroom, their demand is usually lower, as Mr. Kim kind of alluded to, where there's not a lot of demand for vehicles because you don't have multiple individuals living in a smaller space. So with this project, the 12 units, the minimum number of vehicles you would have there is 12 vehicles. There's an overflow or additional parking for additional 8 vehicles if any units do have additional units. But that also does accommodate for guests or other individuals that are coming to the site that could also park on the property. We do allow on-street parking in a temporary basis so that individuals, if we're visiting and there's not available parking, there may be other on-street parking that they could have. But any residents that are living in the development, the intent of the code is to provide off-street parking for those individuals so they wouldn't significantly have vehicles parking on local roadways overnight for individuals that live in the facility. So staff, based on the review of the petition, thought that the number of spaces provided was sufficient for the unit mix as proposed. If this was more of a 3-bedroom development in the same number of spaces for the same number of units, have some more concerns because you would have more families living in that type of development as opposed to this. You're probably having more single individuals or possibly couples without children, so there's not as a higher demand for more vehicles and more parking spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. And one other comment, if you wouldn't mind, based upon Mrs. Ritter's comment about people running across 14, I think it is important. I personally have observed this from time to time, and I don't think it's unique to the property that we're talking about tonight. Just to remind Chief Finland that he's probably more aware of it than I am, but that issue did come up. And I don't think it's associated with Mr. Kim's project at all. People run across that street, and I don't want to see anybody get hurt. Okay, go ahead.
I have a question, actually for Mr. Kim. How many units are in there now for offices, and how many are filled with businesses?
So some units occupy 2 spaces.
Okay.
So right now, we have 1 vacancy.
So how many businesses are in there right now?
Businesses, there were 9, right now.
9 businesses.
Yeah.
I know one of them is the Chamber of Commerce, right? The Cary Grove
Correct,
Chamber of Commerce. So
yes.
within those businesses, multiple people might be working there, especially the chamber. So 8 businesses, for sure, more than 2 people are, one person's driving each car. They're not all carpooling to work. So 20 spaces, I know commercial versus residential, but 20 spaces for 8 businesses. The chamber has 3 or 4 plus meetings. So I've been there multiple times with the parking lot full, but never full, right? So I think looking at it as, to your point, a single unit or a studio is not gonna have as many as a business might when they're having meetings and customers coming, more than a single person
Correct,
residing
correct.
there.
During
So-
the day, the times are offset.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that I got that answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Brian, do you have the overhead? I wanted to, Mrs. Rigger's question put me in a thought process.
You want a bigger overhead? I can go-
Yeah, I was doing it
Bring it
on my
back up.
phone. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
That's the one. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so if anybody did park in the train lot, they'd have to illegally cross the tracks before illegally crossing 14. Okay,
Get past the
gotcha.
fence and everything.
Yeah, at the fence and the whole 9 yards, I got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
there is, this area was studied as part of the comprehensive plan. There was an improvement that was contemplated for the intersection with Borden Avenue for a potential crosswalk at that location. So right now, at the end of the train platform, if you can see my mouse, there is a
Yes,
crossing
yes.
there.
Right.
But there is no crosswalk that goes across to Borden Avenue, and that's something we've had discussions with IDOT, potentially to do like a landscape median or something there to make a safe crossing, so you can cross half and then cross the other half of the road and have a median in the middle that is kind of a safety area to
Gotcha.
stay in.
Gotcha.
Then IDOT's kind of got away from allowing those, just from a standpoint, they don't like to have an extra barrier within their roadways now. So that's an area that we've looked at for potential future cross area, but there's not a crosswalk there as of today.
Right, right. Okay, thank you.
All right, so any other questions from the ZPA? So before I close the public portion, I just want to double check, is there anyone else present that would like to comment on the application that's here from the public? All right, then I will close the public portion of the meeting, and before I call the motion, I just want to double check with members of the ZPA if anyone has any further questions or comments about the application.
I didn't drive by, but Brian, I assume that the parking on Borden is public parking on the street? There's no restriction, or
Yeah, I don't believe there is a restriction on that. I'm not 100% sure.
other than the normal
The wintertime.
wintertime?
Wintertime
Correct.
restriction.
Yeah, that was my question also.
There's no
Clarification.
restriction. That's one of my shortcuts to get over to 13.
Yeah. So overflow parking is, I mean, just like any neighborhood, street parking, if the driveway's full.
We can always move some of the golf carts out of the way,
Oh, yeah, there's a parking lot down the street by the other business.
across the street.
All right, folks, if there's no other questions, I'm probably going to call the motion, okay?
Yep.
Yeah, all right. So the chair will entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of a conditional use for a 12-unit multifamily dwelling and density and parking variances for the property located at 210 through 214 Crystal Street, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, and those are items 1 through 6.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Simmons, would you call the roll? Sure.
Williams?
Yes.
Kretschmer?
Yes.
Graziano?
Yes.
O'Laughlin?
Yes.
Cassiter?
Yes,
Corey?
Yes. So, Mr. Kim, you have a positive recommendation, and it's been my experience, and I'll leave it to Mr. Simmons here, is that when it's voted this way, something like this is put on the consent agenda. It doesn't mean it can't come off. But typically, it means it's going to kind of sail through the next process, but I don't want to tell you that here publicly, but that's been my experience. And for the public that's assembled, Mr. O'Laughlin has told us on more than one occasion that we're a recommending body, and that's 100% accurate. But I can tell you professionally that those of us that have been on this committee for a good long while, I would say that the vast majority of time, the village elected officials follow the counsel of the recommendations here. So that's why I'm saying it's going to be, probably be on the consent agenda, but Mr. Simmons will be in a better position than I will, Mr. Kim, to tell you when the next meeting's going to be, where this will be on the agenda, and where it lives on the agenda. Okay?
It'll be on the agenda for the May 6th Village Board meeting.
So we'll wish you continued success, and thank you very much. And before we conclude, I just want to double check with any of you if there's questions, comments, or Mr. Simmons' next meetings.
Next meeting, we will have anticipating a petition for, we're in April, now in May. It's likely we'll have at least one case in May, and another one is anticipated for June as well. So we'll have more repeat or concurrent meetings this year than we did last year. And then the one item to note we were discussing beforehand as well is the McHenry County, I forget what it was, the ethics information. Yes, thank you. If you have not completed your ethics survey, make sure that's completed before the end of this month, and I can advise each of you as far as if that's been received as of yet.
Yeah, thank you for the reminder on that. Okay, and so unless there's anything else, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
For the record, I will not be in the country on the second Thursday in May.